Hello viewers and welcome to the latest episode of The Conference Call, the show where Gambling Insider reviews events from around the industry. I'm Tim Poole, editor of Gambling Insider, and today I've got a guest from Gaming America joining us, Kurt Geller. Thanks for being here.
Of course, thank you, Tim.
So it was our pleasure to be at iGA recently in San Diego, and the biggest theme that really struck both of us was threats to tribal gaming. Maybe you could start us off on that, Kirk, and then I'll expand a little bit.
Yeah, of course, we were able to attend some panels about the threats to tribal gaming currently, whether it be predictions markets, DFS, sweepstakes operators. We heard from tribal operators such as James Siva, California Problem Gaming Executive Director Robert Jacobson was also in attendance for some panels, and it really shined a light on the current threats that are facing tribal gaming and how they can counteract those issues.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. How they can counteract those issues is maybe step two, and a lot of tribes maybe haven't quite figured that out yet. The threats facing them, as you outlined, predictions markets, the biggest threat out there. Sweepstakes 2 months ago was considered the biggest threat. At the moment, predictions are kind of outweighing it. But someone who spoke on this really well and quite sharply was Victor Rocha, who spoke to us during the show.
And part of the conference is respecting tribal sovereignty. And then when you have companies like, BetMGM, which is MGM has had, I've been in the industry 28 years, and the whole time I've been here, they've been the Indian fighters. BetMGM is not worthy to be in California, and Prize Picks is the same thing.
What can brands like that, or potentially other brands, do to maybe change that opinion, especially if, as you say, there's a history perhaps on the wrong side of things?
They can throw themselves off the tallest building they can find.
I wasn't quite expecting that answer.
Yeah, that's what they can throw themselves off the tallest building they can find. We don't forgive, we don't forget. If you're coming into California, you've taken money out of California, we're coming for you.
So as ever, some strong views from Victor Rocha there, and there were plenty of those across the week. But another topic that was really important, and as you mentioned briefly just now, Kirk, responsible gaming, and I almost said responsible gambling, but maybe I can tee you off here. Because responsible gaming and problem gambling, there was actually quite a distinction between the two during the week.
Yes, that was a main topic during some of the panels that I attended, and how responsible gaming and problem gambling have kind of mixed together, and their initiatives have kind of mixed together to sort of become confused in what both are trying to set out to do. And one of the people who spoke on that was actually Robert Jacobson, who you could see here.
I would say it's important to start by understanding or by establishing, I should say, that the gaming industry utilizes the word gaming, and as such, we use responsible gaming and problem gambling. Now, problem gambling, it's not the clearest terminology, but it is the clearest terminology that we have. It is very hard to convey complex topics in very few words. And I've been in this field for almost 15 years. I have wanted to find something better for 15 years, and I have yet to find something better. So our job is really to educate the public what gambling disorder is the clinical term, what gambling disorder is. And gambling disorder is being addicted to gambling. There is a lower tier of that where you're being harmed by your gambling, but maybe have not developed the actual issues in brain chemistry that result in an uncontrollable urge to gamble. And so we take those two levels of disordered level 2 and disordered level 3, the clinical terms, and we call them problem gamblers.
Yeah, so that was Robert's view on how responsible gaming and problem gambling have kind of intersected and become confused in recent time. And I believe, Tim, you had a chance to learn more about AI and tribal gaming as well.
Yeah, so we had some really interesting interviews throughout the week. Robert was a good speaker. As we mentioned, Victor already, plenty of others across the board. We won't mention everyone, but that doesn't mean that they weren't good. But someone we did speak with, and who also had an interesting panel, was Robin Villarreal of Gila River Resorts and Casinos, the Chief Information Officer. She has some really interesting views on AI, and as did kind of the tribal panelists throughout the week. Because tribes, we associate with traditional land-based gaming, so you might not necessarily assume they're as up-to-date with AI as other areas of the industry, but certainly there was a lot of appreciation of it throughout the week. A panel I was at was actually so busy that I had to stand at the back, and there was a gentleman right next to me, Kirk, you'll remember, who was plugging a book written about AI, and I don't know if he co-wrote it because he mentioned it quite a few times. But certainly there was a lot of encouragement for C-level executives to talk to ChatGPT and to use AI. But at the same time, Robin was open in saying that she's not fully comfortable with AI in gaming, and here's her talking about it with us now.
Now, right, AI is pretty much free as it is, right? And so there's a lot of information that is being shared up there that, may not be facts. There's been instances where people use like a chat GPT tool and they realize that the information that they're asking for is not actually false. And so they have to go, nope, your answer is wrong. Can you please find the real answer? And you have to prompt, your tool to get the appropriate answer. But then it's almost like the whole trust but verify, right, in technology. So for me, that is the reason why I don't feel very comfortable about having, like cloud-based gaming.
So as you can see, there were some really interesting panels throughout the week, but of course, that's only kind of a part of the show, maybe half of it. The other half, a big section, is the actual convention, the trade show floor. And there were plenty of really interesting products, some new releases, some big companies across the floor. Isn't as big as it is in G2E, but it almost makes it easier to walk from one end to the other, but you've still got the big names there. Kirk, did any stands in particular, for want of a better phrase, stand out to you?
Definitely no. We had the opportunity to stop by IGT, Interblock, Optics. Interblock especially, they always manage to put together such a fantastic booth, whether it be at G2E or iGA. It doesn't really matter the size of the trade show floor. It's always a present of ours to manage to stop by Interblock and see all the people there. And IGT, Optics were obviously fantastic. FabiCash, Imagine This. We had an opportunity to stop by some really fantastic booths. Were there any that stood out to you also, Tim?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with your list, and also throw out there that we've got a cover feature coming up in the upcoming issue of May-June Gaming America, which you yourself have written on Interblock. We spoke with John Connolly for that one. But one I will mention that we haven't so far is the Ainsworth stand. Some really interesting products. We spoke with CEO Harold Newman at the show as well, and he talked about the kind of low denomination slots doing really well for the company. So, the kind of concept of maybe staking a little less and aiming for that bigger win.
Absolutely, yeah. No, Ainsworth definitely stood out to me as well. And your conversation with Harold should be really fun to hear in the future coming up.
Absolutely, yeah. So in terms of the show overall, what kind of impressions did you have? One thing I will say is, as much as I was at the Anaheim show in 2022, but as much as I love Anaheim, and I've kind of been there kind of on personal trips as well, I think it's safe to say the industry looks like it much prefers San Diego to Anaheim for iGA.
Yeah, no, I mean, personally, I love the San Diego area, and I think iGA fit really well there. The walking distance from hotels, the way the expo hall could kind of just lead down the convention center. I think they've really found a home in San Diego for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and they literally have found a good home for the next couple of years. But in 2027, iGA will move back to Vegas for at least 1 year, so that should be interesting too.
Yeah, no, obviously we have the G2E conference out here, and adding iGA will only kind of showcase how Las Vegas is the home and the capital of gaming in the entire industry as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think obviously G2E is the biggest show in the US, but I think iGA definitely the biggest in tribal gaming. But I would say it's perhaps slightly underrated in that G2E is huge, but if you're going to pick one of the two, iGA was really productive this year, and I wouldn't necessarily bet against, if you could only go to one, iGA, there'd still be a lot of value just attending that one.
Absolutely. I mean, the conversations you can have, they definitely feel more personal. As we spoke about, there's definitely threats to tribal gaming as well, but that doesn't mean that people aren't open about it there and what they plan to do to counteract those issues, as we discussed previously. So I think it does really help if you're looking for a more insider's point of view into the industry, especially from a tribal point of view as well.
Yeah, really good point. Kirk, thanks very much for joining me. Pleasure to be with you at the show as well. And that wraps up our coverage of the conference call.
Of course, Tim, always great to join you. It was a pleasure.
And to our viewers, thanks for watching, and see you again next time.